What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Existential Stoic Podcast. This week we're going to do kind of a whatever episode, like we used to do
Mm.
in the past, and we're going to continue that on moving forward every now and then. I'm Danny, my buddy Randy. What's up, Randy?
What's up, Danny? Yeah, this is fun because we just get to chat about our weeks. Like we were talking, we both had pretty busy weeks. And
Yeah,
sometimes it's hard because time just flies by no matter what you do. It just like, whoo, so fast.
it moves fast, and you know what's hard too? It's like I think you have your mind on so many different things that it's like, it's not, it's present but not present. You know what I mean? It's like that's always been one of my problems. Yeah, you're just focused both on we're always looking ahead, and it's always hard to kind of, pull yourself back sometimes.
Yeah, you know what I found for me is like time moves especially fast when things are going well. Like
Yeah.
when when I'm working on a
Yeah.
goal, when I have like
Yeah.
some passions that I'm involved in, like time goes exceptionally fast and there's no spare time. But then when I have no vision and no goals, when I'm not really caring about anything, time like slows down to like trying to move through molasses. It's so slow and it's
Yeah.
just like torturous and it's just like, come on, when is this gonna end?
Yeah. Like a day feels like a fucking like week or a month or something. Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's funny too. It is kind of like it's almost kind of like ironic and sad in the way that that's what happens, where it just like it speeds up so fast, right? Because it's like there's been times where I feel like like years have gone by very quickly because of that, and yeah, it's like so you want a good, exciting life, but at the same time, it's going to go by really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it would be more enjoyable if it was the opposite way. If when you were
Yeah,
really
totally.
enjoying it, if it went by slowly, and when you weren't enjoying it, it just went by really fast. But that's just not the way it goes. But another thing that came to mind this week that you were just mentioning is like uh, kind of just taking one day at a time. Like I noticed there are some areas in my life where like even though I would say like 99% of the time things are like awesome. But there are some areas where they're not. And of course the mind fixates on those areas. And
Yeah,
sometimes they instill some fear, some like anxiety, different things like that. So one of like my biggest tricks or tools or techniques of the past few weeks has just been like one day at a time. Can I just get through this day? And like the more I practice that, the better it ends up becoming because like every single time I'm like, can I just get through today? And I'm like, yeah, of course, duh.
yeah,
But like I'm
yeah.
trying to solve the whole entire problem for my life. I'm trying to solve it all today, and that doesn't work. And that causes anxiety and stress and all these things.
Yeah, it's like we've already gotten through how many days now, it's like so you can get through another one. But it is true though. I notice that all the time because it's like you're working on something, you're trying to develop new skills, and you have those moments where like you're panicked about the future, like can I even do this or something, right? And you have to like pull yourself back and focus on the present. Or like, things get hard for some reason. Yeah, it happens to everybody, I think, where we just like whatever it is in our day that triggers it, and then that's what becomes the focus the rest of the day. And if you let that do that, you just you spiral down. I think it happens really fast.
Mm-hmm.
But I noticed that though, it takes a lot. It's funny, like I think it's almost like looking back, I think like I've read all these like, we talked about Marcus Aurelius and stuff. We read all these books like, so many years ago, and then it's like I'm just starting to understand now. I feel like sometimes where it's like, it takes literally work every day, and it always takes work. Like it's never like you're going to be perfect at everything, and there's always going to be curveballs because life is, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So that like that sense of not knowing just I think causes everybody stress. And it's funny you have to keep working at it though, keep being both like in a good mindset and also like moving in the right direction.
Yeah. It's like we're we're kind of from the Marcus Aurelius things you were just talking about. He something that I got from that was he was saying that like, we look at a tree to do the job of a tree. We look at a dog to do the job of a dog. We look at an ox to do the job of an ox. And it's like, well, then it's the human's job to do the job of a human. And like so many times we're trying to shrink from the responsibility of our job. And I'm not just talking about like whatever profession or whatever thing you're getting paid for,
Yeah.
but also like the job of enduring heartache and grief
Yeah.
and sadness and depression. Like that's the job of a
Yeah.
human. Why are we not accepting responsibility for doing that stuff? Like the amount of things that he just puts into such crazy perspective is
Yeah.
amazing.
and just not doing the job being like a good person, being a human being in the sense of like being part of the world, right? And being a decent human being, generally
Mhm.
speaking, which I think a lot of us, it's hard. It is funny though. I think it's funny because we also look at people and whatever area you're focused on, right? You look at people that are doing really well in it, and people assume that it's easy. And they assume that they've gotten to a point where it takes no work or they're just naturally gifted or something. That's always the story we tell, but it's not
Or
true.
that they're actually enjoying their life.
Yeah, that too. Which has been proven wrong like a million times.
Yeah.
You know,
Like I think that's the
it's funny.
biggest shocker is we look at all these people who have money and we're like, oh, like their life must be amazing because we see the curated picture of their life where it's like every one of the top moments on Instagram or whatever. And
Yeah,
that's all we see. And we're like, their life must be amazing. And it's like, no, they had terrible diarrhea on that trip. They hated the people they were with over there on their mega yacht. Like everything, because yeah, the more money, the more problems. Like I get it that up until a certain point, money can help, but like really, it just gets you to your problems in a nicer vehicle.
yeah, yeah. Which I guess can be nice on the way there, right? But the
Yeah,
no, it is funny. I think because we focus so much though just on one metric of success. I think that's always been the problem. Like, you know, you look back at these thinkers in the past, they were looking at how do you develop as a whole person. And I think so much now is focused on just really one thing. It's just gaining wealth or gaining objects rather than actually like who you are that you bring with you everywhere.
well, I
Yeah.
like that you say that because I was watching a couple ethics things this week, and there was a speech given by the U.S. Naval College, I think it was, and they were talking about how leaders need to be both competent and they need competency and character. If they only have one, it gets them into a lot of trouble. Because if they're not competent and they just have character, yeah, sure, they can lead, but they're going to lead you in the wrong direction and crash a ship. Whereas
Yeah.
if they're just confident and no have character, they're going to do terrible things, like bring down the whole company again. So, like, having both of those things is really important. And I think school, especially, 100% stresses the competency. Like, that's the only thing they care about. They're just interested in building perfectionists. But
Yeah. Yeah.
character, unless you take classes in philosophy, you're not going to get anything about character.
Well, I think that's the problem. Like,
Aside from like the don't plagiarize, it's wrong. You can't plagiarize.
yeah.
And like, yeah,
No, I think that's the problem that we don't have any means of really teaching it. It's something you have to find on your own. I think it's why you see so much. It's also, I think, why you probably see so much, especially like in the US, like, self-help books and stuff like that, that emphasize these kinds of things later on because there's nothing, you don't get any of it throughout your whole education. You're being educated, but really it's just for, like you said, it's really just to join the workforce, to be productive in the sense of earning, but not really to be happy, not to live a good life, not to do all these other things that require a whole nother set of skills. Yeah.
yeah. So another thing that I do want to talk about is just like gratitude. So we've
Mm.
talked about this a lot on the show, like doing this small delights, and that's really helpful for
Oh
building
yeah.
gratitude. And I found that like ever since we started doing that a year and a half or almost 2 years ago now, like it's something it's like a snowball rolling down a hill. Like it just builds on
Yeah.
itself. I find myself being more grateful all the time. Like sometimes being grateful to like the verge of tears. Like it's crazy
Yeah.
how grateful you can get. And like, I get to a point where like the moment is so amazing that I'm like, if I just had this, like this is good enough. But then there's the other part of me that's always scary because like, what if I lose this? Then I'm like, oh no.
But I think then the fear comes back. I think it's funny. Yeah, my point of view on it has changed dramatically in the past couple of years with gratitude because I never really thought about it too much. I mean, vaguely, I guess here and there. But it is, I think part of it though is that's also the trick though, is just being grateful for now. It's not about you can't worry about the future because I think that's part of what gratitude also is being thankful for now, but not, and that you have the opportunity to actually like still be here and you'll have that future, but not, stressing about those other things because now it's what it is, right? There's always going to be something to be grateful for. I think that's the other thing that I like the small delights kind of teaches is that, right, there's always going to be something. And I think
Hmm.
that that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah, it's such an amazing practice. And for those of you guys who don't know what that is, you just at the end of the day write down three things that went well, and
Yeah, it's
that's it.
super easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally anything. It could be anything. It's like the
Uh-huh.
best practice in the world. But it does help though, because I think it's also, I think that's, I notice like for myself, that's one of the reasons why I think I always, whenever I have bad days or whenever I do like things start to go bad, it's because I'm not really, I'm focused on the wrong things. That's all it is. That's always the case, right? You're just focused on the wrong stuff and you just have to shift over to focusing on positive things.
Mm. Yeah, and I was reading some. I'm not sure if it was from Marcus Aurelius or for something else I was reading. Where like most of the time, it's not actually our problems that cause the big issues. It's like our interpretation or our thoughts about the problem that
Yeah.
causes all the stress and the issues. So if you can just
Yeah.
let go of the thoughts about the problem, then the problem's
Dude,
gone.
how many times, like, I mean, I know this happened to you because it happened to me. Like, how many times, like, student loans, like, when you first started and it was so overwhelming and you saw all your debt. And so, what did you do? Instead of dealing with it and addressing it, you just ignore it or deny it or run from it. And it just gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
But when you make a phone call and when you start addressing it, it's not perfect, but you start dealing with it, that weight goes away immediately. And it's like, but this is what we do with everything. That's just like an extreme example, right? Like we have a problem with our significant other or with a friend, but instead of talking to them about it, we just play it out in our head a million times until it gets worse and worse and worse until we've so gone so far away from what the actual thing was, right? And it's like it's just we just trick ourselves constantly.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, there's that book, The Obstacle is the Way, but
Yeah.
it's kind of true because, like, wherever that thing is that you're avoiding, that's exactly the direction you need to be going. And it's just, it sucks, but it really only sucks while you're avoiding it. Once you
Yeah.
actually take it
Yeah.
on, it usually disappears a lot faster than you actually thought it would.
Because the funny thing is, I think that the obstacle we're avoiding, the resistance we're avoiding, we can overcome. It's just a matter of taking the initiative. But I think the more we tend to avoid, and I know this is for myself at least, in the past, like the more we tend to avoid, the more depressed we get, the more negative, and the less like strength we have to even face those obstacles. And I
Mhm.
think that's true. Like you literally lose your ability to address them, to like confront them. And I think that's why like you have to just keep doing it. Because even though it does suck, like, yeah, but it feels so much better to just get it out of the way. Like,
Yeah, 100%. And like another realization I kind of had over the past week or so is that so like I'm very goal oriented, and I think we've discussed this many times about how we're both kind of
we've
goal
established
oriented.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like getting to the goals, and clearly like when I'm closer to the goal or when I achieve a goal, yeah, it's like everything's great. But historically, whenever I was far from the goal or I was being challenged or things just weren't working out well, I would always get really down and be like, why? Man, this
Yeah.
whole this whole like
Yeah.
victimization for me type of thing. But uh, like so I mentioned I've been doing Wim Hof a lot recently. And that I just like you get to very, very deep meditative spaces. And so like one day while I was doing that, I just had this very, very clear realization that like it's not actually about the goals at all. It's like who you become by obtaining those goals. Like that's
Yeah,
all
that
that's
makes sense.
important, who you actually
Yeah.
become. And I saw that like the only time that I actually become someone other than what I already am is in those difficult times. So like all of a sudden it opened up this whole like, oh, those difficult times, that's actually what I should be aiming for because that's what's developing me.
Oh, it's funny. Like that's what Nietzsche thought too. Is like the only time we actually like develop as an individual is when you face hardship because you overcome something. It forces you to, learn new things, to improve, to be better, right? To be more than you were before. If everything was easy, you would never need to change. You would always be the same just throughout. And that would be, kind of boring if you think about it. And it would be a life with like no growth.
Yeah.
It'd be
But
totally static.
even though I have that realization, even though I say that, I still
I don't think
like
it.
the inside of me is like, but I don't really want to go through that stuff.
Well, that's what I find funny though. It's like a constant. It's like constantly like on the one hand like like what you have to do or the truth or whatever, but it's like no matter how many times you do it, you're still fighting yourself. It's funny. Like it gets easier, I think. Like it has gotten easier. I noticed that. Like it's gotten easier to to get over those difficult moments or to just address things when I have to. But like it's gotten better, but it's still there, you know?
Yeah. And like the discipline of having, because we talk all the time about having like regular practices that we do, and like the discipline of doing that on a regular basis, and the discipline of instilling positive thoughts into our mind on a regular basis, and the discipline of meeting up to talk about this
Yeah.
stuff every week, like the
Yeah.
change that that's made in me personally has just been crazy. Because like while all these other people are just like boo hoo wah me whatever, I'm like, yeah, great, life's going to be like that anyways, but let's look at what the positive stuff is, because there's so much opportunity here. And I so like the office that I go to work at, I make it a habit of just introducing myself to people, because I learned that from a book that I read on a regular basis, The Magic of Thinking Big. Like the most important person in the room is the person who's most actively introducing themselves. So that's what I do at the office. And this one dude I was talking to the other day, he's like, I've been here for a month and you're the only person who's ever talked to me. And I'm like, yeah, because I said hi. And he's
Yeah.
like,
And you don't
yeah, but nobody else says hi. It's like they're afraid. And it's like, yeah, everybody's afraid.
yeah.
Just go say hi. They're all waiting. Everybody's dying for somebody else to come say hi. Just go say
Yeah.
hi.
Yeah. It's like, and you haven't gone and say hi to anybody either. It's like,
Yeah, exactly. He didn't. Yeah.
it is funny though, because we convince ourselves of these things and then it just holds us back. And instead of just trying it and I think that's the funny thing. You're right that once you try it once and do it, you realize that the what thing you imagined is really not accurate. However
Yeah.
difficult you thought it would be, or the response. I mean, because really, what's the worst is somebody's going to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm busy right now." Like, but whatever. They're not going to be mean or rude. I mean, you're just
Yeah.
saying hi. Yeah,
Yeah. Like a few times people have been weird, or they just weren't very talkative or whatever. So I just chalk that up to fine statistics. Some people, yeah, like
yeah,
whatever.
it's
Or
going to
maybe
happen,
like
right?
some people just aren't going to like me. I'm totally
Yeah,
cool with that. So like it
it's always
doesn't
going to
matter,
happen.
because the amount of great relationships and connections you get from just saying hi to people, it just makes a huge difference.
It is funny. I think it is all. It's probably all fear. Though. It really is like all fear. That's really what it is. And dude, yeah, it's funny. Like having those routines and stuff has helped me so much too. It's like invaluable, and I think incalculable how much it's helped because it's. I noticed too. It's like the more you have that, the more the easier it is to bring yourself out of things too, and to focus on what's good. Because yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Shit's not going to change if you don't change it. That's the truth, right? It's like it'll
Yeah.
just stay the same.
No, like I look forward to doing this for the next 50 plus years, because it's
Yeah,
like great therapy we talk about. And
yeah.
just imagine when we're like in our 90s and we're still doing this, it's going to be like, like, my prostate's the size of a grapefruit. But just imagine the great philosophical advice
That'll
we'll
be
have.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'll be good. And we'll have more
Uh,
years to go with it. Yeah,
I know, because then we'll be closer to the philosophers. We'll be older like they were. We'll have life experience.
wiser.
I seriously
Yeah.
think life starts at 40. Like the I've read that in, I think it was Think and Grow Rich, where they said that a man's productive years don't start until he's about 40. But like from experience, life just sucks up until you're 40. If
Yeah.
you had a decent life early on, you were lucky. Like let's say you were a star football player and whatever, and life was great to you. Yeah, you were lucky. But like for most people, life just sucks up until then. And when I was younger, for anybody who's younger who's listening to this, like my life sucked when I was younger. And
Yeah.
a lot of the reason that it sucked was I just like wasn't very comfortable with myself. I was trying to impress other people. I was trying to live a life that other people, or that I thought other people wanted me to have. And so like as I got older, more life experience, just kind of started living more truer to myself, and life got so much better.
No, I think that's true though, because I think it's, yeah, I mean, I've gone through the same thing. I think it's like as you get older, you just realize more who you are and you care less about the other stuff. Because you can't help it when you're younger. It's like you get all this information from outside about what you're supposed to be, do, act, all that crap, and you internalize it, and then it's like it's not you, so it doesn't work. It's like
Yeah.
it's actually very simple, but none of us see it.
Yeah.
It's
And it's
really
like
funny.
it's funny like coming in contact with yourself. So like the reason I say that is because when I was young, I used to like paint little miniatures and I used to read fantasy books. And like all this stuff I stopped doing because it wasn't cool. Like I was a nerd back then when being a nerd wasn't cool. And
Yeah.
I was really embarrassed about it. So I started lifting weights and working on cars and picking up girls and all this stuff because I thought maybe then I'll get some approval and then I can survive. But
Yeah.
now I'm just like, I knew back then what I was doing. Like, what nowadays I just do it anyways, and I get so much enjoyment from it because it's what actually makes my heart sing.
Well, and I think that's the other problem. I think a lot of people too, they never start doing those things again. I read this was oh man, I don't remember where I read it, but they said like most people, especially like in like the United States, that's where the study was done, but like most adults have like no hobbies because things they like doing when they were younger, they just don't do because they feel like it's like if they're not making money from it, it's not worth it. And
Mhm.
like it's kind of funny because it's like, well, okay, it's not worth it because you're not making money, but you could get happiness from it or pleasure or it could be enjoyable. Like there's all these other things you can get from it besides that. Yeah.
I ask myself this week, like, am I just chasing my tail? Because a lot of stuff that I do is very financially motivated. And I know from like a very base level that money doesn't give you happiness. Like I know that deeply from everything that I've read, from every rich person that I've read their biography, and from every rich person I've
Yeah.
met. I know deep down that money doesn't give you happiness. And yet I still find myself pursuing it. Like, and I'm just like, am I chasing my tail? Like, what am I doing? Why am I spending so much time and effort pursuing the god of money when I could just be pursuing things that make me happy?
I mean, I think it's tough, right? Part of us, like, I mean, part of it is just that, we want to have security and we want to have, and it gives us the freedom to do other things. But there's like that trap where like you get caught in it and you don't have any
Yeah.
freedom because you're trapped in that trap of trying to just get it. And I
Well,
think that's the hard part is that balance.
that's the part for me is like the security or the safety because like even though financially I'm doing better than I ever have historically, I still feel like the the house of cards is going to fall or like the trap door is going to like I always feel like it's all just going to go. And never have I actually really experienced that in life. Like I've always been very good at picking myself up my bootstraps and creating stuff and doing whatever needs
Yeah.
to be done to make money. And I even have like a profession that I don't enjoy, but it's like a profession that I could fall back on. But like,
Yeah.
there's always that fear of just like it all just going kaput, and that's like, I think that's the biggest driver for me is not feeling safe.
But in a sense, though, you're also making yourself safer and safer though, because as time passes, you're also learning new things. So even if things did fall apart, you have more ways of getting back to a level of security than you did before. So really, you're not in that position of being unsafe. Like stuff
Yeah,
could fall because it could. I mean, you don't ever know what's going to happen, and I think that's why you can't think it's like secure. But at the same time, like you have more ways now than ever to bring yourself back. I think that's important to remember. So in a way, you're making yourself safer that way too. And those are things that can't be taken from you. It's not like
yeah,
the
true.
financial market
Yeah,
could crash and that's different, but like your skills
yeah.
aren't
You
going to go
can,
away.
yeah, like whatever skills you have. That the I mean, if the economy crashes, you're still going to have those skills. If you get divorced, you're
Yeah.
still going to have those skills. Yeah.
If you know how to
So,
learn, you can still learn, right? You can still do new things. I mean,
yeah.
yeah.
So I got to tell you a funny story, just because this has
Okay.
been happening a lot this week, and I've been literally like cracking up, laughing out loud in real life because of how
Nice.
often this happens. So, uh, I wouldn't say that I'm particularly impatient. I'm just like I when I want to get somewhere, I just want to I get there, and like I'm a
Yeah.
fast walker, and like there's very few moments in my life where I don't know where I'm going. Okay, but like I think the universe knows this about me and just has a really fun time just like playing with me. So so I'll be like walking and the road is completely open, the sidewalk's completely open. I'm just walking, the sidewalk's completely open, and then literally nobody else anywhere. And this old 90-year-old man will just like walk out right in front of me and then just like slowly mosey on like right there's nobody else anywhere else and it's just him. Or like same thing will happen on an escalator or like all these times or
Yeah.
like I'll be walking to leave a building and all of a sudden somebody just decides to stand in the door like just chilling just stand and like this past
Yeah.
week I have just been cracking up because I'm like how can this possibly happen? This is absurd. I'm looking around, there's nobody, and there's just like this obstacle right here. But I
all
have
this other
been
route.
oh my gosh, it's been a riot recently because
Maybe it's trying to remind you to slow down.
that's probably it. Yeah. I've been looking at it like that, or like it's trying to keep me out of maybe there was gonna be
Laughing
like
at
a
yourself.
piano that fell on my head if I was still walking that fast. So like needed to slow me down so then the
Oh,
piano will
literally like
fall
save
and
your
I'll
life.
go,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Like I
I've been
said, maybe
looking at
it's
it
just
that way.
trying to keep you like laughing at yourself too, because I think that's good too, right?
It's been one of those things where like you're like, come on, could this
Yeah.
seriously happen? I'm just like,
Do you
oh
ever
my
catch
gosh.
yourself? Do you ever catch yourself though when you're like really like being really impatient, and then you're like, wait, what am I doing? Like, because I can like wait. That
Yeah. Yeah. I know. It's
happened.
like the hurry up and wait thing. Uh I know myself I'm not very good at waiting. Like I think I'm getting better, but I want it now. I don't want to wait.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
waiting sucks. Especially when you're working
Hmm.
on something. You want to be to that point now. Whatever that
Yeah.
point is that you know.
Yeah. There was some experience that I just had this past week where I like literally didn't wait. I was like, I don't wait for this stuff. Like I actually oh man, I'll think of it
Dude, I
later.
was
But
I was I'll give you an example. I was in Target the other day. This is like a little while ago. And I had like three things. And I got up to self checkout and they had nobody on the register and just self checkout. And there's like this huge line with people with full virtue. And I just left. Just left all my stuff and
yeah,
left.
right? Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want to waste 40 minutes here. Like,
Yeah. I know it's crazy. Like, but yeah. So yeah, this week has been busy. I haven't even had
yeah.
any time to play Zelda, which is
Oh man, really?
I know, right? Yeah. But I
How many
gotta
hours
say,
yet?
I actually beat the game already. This is my second
Nice.
time through, and the second time is so much better. Like
That
I
says a lot
know,
about the game though, man. If you play it, that's like that's back to back. You just started
dude,
over, huh?
it's a great
It's
game.
crazy.
Like I probably sunk close to 100 hours on it the first
Yeah.
time, and this is the second time, and it's so much better. Like I was actually contemplating life while playing Zelda the second time through because I was like, man, this is so much better. Like I know what I'm supposed to do. I know what the important things are, the not important things. And most of all, I'm not scared at all because I know
Yeah.
exactly how it's going to end up. So like the first time through, I was scared, I was confused, I had no idea what I was doing. And like I look at that as my life, like all these things where I'm scared, I'm confused, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, man, if I could just harness that mindset of just being like, okay, cool. I know it's going to work out. Like, let's just do this and enjoy.
Yeah. I think that's the nice part about getting older is there's an extent to which that does happen. At least I hope it happens for most people, right?
Yeah,
And it is
true.
possible. I think it's just realizing that, like most things we encounter, I think, aren't that different from things we've encountered before, right? In some, and most of them are kind of similar.
Yeah.
And there's
You
really,
remember you remember when we discussed it like once a while ago, that thing from Alex Hormozy, that mindset where you've already done it 1,000 times?
oh
Like
yeah,
how
yeah,
would I address it?
visualization. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And I was thinking about that where I was like these new things that I'm trying to do that are difficult the first time. I was thinking about like why not looking at that like how would I address this if this was my second time playing through, you know? Because I
yeah.
think
That could work.
I think it could definitely change the perspective, but I'm not sure
Well,
how.
a lot of people think of it like negative visualization, like with bad things that happen to us, right? You imagine it happening like 1,000 times, and then by the time you're not going to care, right? It's just something that happened. It's not this horrible event because it removes all that like evaluative qualities, and it just makes it a thing that happened. Yes, I think it could work on the flip side too. You could even use it probably in a positive way too. Like if I in a year when I'm really good at this and I've done this 100 times, this problem won't be a problem, right? Or whatever, these things won't be that difficult. They just are now because I'm new at it. I don't know, something like that, maybe, if that works.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. Is just like if I would say the best part of it now is there's just not the fear. Like
Yeah.
I was always afraid the first time playing through that I was gonna be killed or something was gonna happen. I was
Get
just so
stuck on
scared.
something forever.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And like now there's just none of that fear. And so the enjoyment has been amplified so much.
Isn't that funny though, dude? It's like that's like the one thing I've noticed more and more is it's just our imagination. It really dictates so much, and it's about getting it under control because it's a really good thing. I think it can be so helpful and like can be a great way to like just like appreciate things, appreciate life, appreciate what you have. But it can also be just this thing that just drags you into like the darkest places, or it just takes a little bit of thing that you might have anxiety or fear about and just magnifies it 1,000 times over, right? So it's like
Yeah.
I think that's yeah, it's really interesting. It's like getting not letting ourselves just run wild, basically, but getting things in check.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you say was your biggest challenge this week?
I think my biggest challenge this week was just staying, you know, I was working on stuff that I'm trying to learn right now. And so like, those moments when you think like, oh, this is gonna be there's too much, or like, you know, I'll never get to that point. And just reminding myself that like, well, I'm still learning it, but I'm doing well right now. So I will get there. And like the things that I'm looking at, the people that I'm looking at as examples have been doing it for decades. So that there's
Mhm.
no, reason to think that I won't get there too.
Yeah,
And
that's a
that's
good point because when you're learning, it can oftentimes feel overwhelming. And you're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
how did they know all that stuff? Oh my gosh, that's not fair.
Why isn't it super simple right now?
Right? Yeah.
Dude, it's so funny.
I
I get frustrated. Like, why doesn't it just happen? Like, why can't you just sit down and just do it? And it's like, well, of course I can't, but
yeah.
I wish I could.
So, hey, I know. It'll come. There's
Yeah.
there's this motivation video that I've listened to a number of times, and it's basically talking about a visualization. It's like, let's say, God forbid, you were in a coma and you woke up and you forgot who you were, and they told you you're a Navy SEAL and they want you back now. Don't you think you'd be a little bit more motivated than if you were, say, like a piano teacher? And I've been using that a lot recently for myself because I'm just like I just imagine that I forgot that I'm a really good computer programmer
Yeah.
and they
Right.
want me back. And I just need to learn this stuff. Like especially every time I get frustrated because I'm just like, but I'm a really good programmer. I just need to remember this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think, at least for me, that's been a really helpful mindset because who's to say it's any different? Like,
Yeah.
but I mean, because if you look at it, like we both were drawn to it because we're good with technology. We
Yeah.
find it a lot of fun, and
I like
yeah,
stop
so
problem solving too. It's fun. It's like a puzzle. It's
yeah,
like
yeah. So who's to say that wasn't actually the dream that was put in our heart, like the actual fruition of our being on this planet to do this stuff?
yeah.
So in that sense, we kind of are amazing computer programmers, and we just have to draw it out.
Yeah, it is funny, isn't it though? It's like I think too, what I noticed too, one of my problems is like you want things to go fast, but in reality, like, especially with programming, it's like everything's built into piece by piece, piecemeal. So it's gotta actually go slow. And like when you
Mm.
try and go too fast, you end up like, you miss things. And so it's funny, like I've been trying to like just kind of like slow down too a little bit, and I think that's been helping a lot.
Yeah,
Because you want to rush to the end. Everyone wants to rush to the end.
yeah.
That's the
I
patience
think,
is always the goal.
yeah, but then I think if you rush to the end too fast, then you end up missing it because then you're just doing this job that you may not even like anymore.
Yeah.
We're in probably like the best part of it. Like I know a lot of these guys that I talk with at the office, a lot of them are developers, but dude, I mean, one dude's been doing SQL for like 16 years. He hasn't even
Oh
looked at
man.
anything other than SQL for 16 years. I was like, man, how boring is that? Or
Yeah.
like somebody else just only does C sharp. And so
Yeah.
like because he was the third or fourth person I met messing with C sharp, I was like, oh, maybe I'll learn C sharp. And I was learning it and I was like, oh, this is super simple. It's like it reminded me very much of Golang. So like I think the more that you do it, the more connections you make, and we're in a good spot right
Dude,
now where
that's
we're able to learn.
well, that's funny. It's just like I remember when I was an undergrad, like I felt when I started to see connections between everything I was studying, that's when like I felt like things open up. And it's the same way with this, like really all the languages are kind of similar. They all do the same stuff. It's just seeing that. And once you see it, actually makes it a lot easier. It's not
Yeah,
too hard to transition. It's just different,
yeah,
you know, different syntax and stuff. That's really what it is.
yeah,
Yeah, it's cool though. I'm looking forward to it.
yeah. So when you're learning, do you kind of go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, or do you kind of have more of a plan? Like, are you more spontaneous, or are you more do you plan it out?
I try to have. I'm pretty I try to have like several like things that I'm working on, like kind of like projects that orient what I'm doing. But I do switch between things
Mm,
often because like if I get stuck on something, I'll move to something else for a little while because I find that helps me keep going forward instead of getting frustrated and then
uh,
come back to it. And it helps me think about it a while. So like yeah, I tend to do that. I mean, I do a lot. There is times where I just like I'll see something and then I just get digression often, like because it's fun and why not? But like, and I
yeah.
want to learn it anyway. But yeah, usually I try to have like you know multiple little projects that keep me kind of in the right direction. If that
Hmm.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Why would
kind
you?
of um I like to I like to find things that resonate with me. Like
Yeah.
when I was younger, especially, I had a very hard time stopping doing something. Like if I was reading a book that was just terrible, or I would have to finish it, or like if I was doing a course that I didn't like, I would have to finish it.
Yeah.
Um, and so it was something that as I get older, I more I'm just like, it doesn't make sense to continue, especially because there's so many, like literally the universe has become infinitely abundant over the past
Yeah.
15 years to
Yeah.
the point where like if something isn't working, clearly just change direction and find something else. Because sometimes I'll take courses that are terrible and then I'll do it
All right.
another way and it's amazing.
Yeah.
All it took was teaching in a different way. The one area though that I do a little bit differently still is with books, because like there are some books that like challenge me in terms of my perspective, and I know it's more important for me to actually stick through it and have my perspective
Yeah.
challenged than to just put it aside and go read something that I agree with.
Well, most people never do that though. I think that is important because most people just interact with media and literature and stuff that supports their ideas rather than challenging it. But if you never challenge them, you also you don't you don't come up with new ways of like supporting your beliefs either and understanding them. So yeah, I think that's really important.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
sometimes it's a challenge to do that. Like the other day I
Oh
just
yeah.
sat, I was only like maybe halfway through the book, but I was like I was so triggered by this book. I was just like I need to finish this. And I just sat
Yeah.
down that day and read the rest of the book and I was like, whew, okay, done.
Sometimes it's better just to
And
get the hell out of the way too though. Yeah.
yeah, and at the end of the book, I probably got like the most useful advice I've gotten in years. So like it was worth struggling through the entire thing. But I'm so happy I'm done reading
Yeah, yeah. It always is worth it. I think more people should do that though. It sucks that they don't because it's like, yeah,
it. Yeah. Well, we're
the
lucky.
unwillingness to change.
Dude, we're so lucky that we read books. Like the
Yeah.
average person does not read books, and it's so astonishing. Like, what are you wasting your time doing?
Uh, it's so much better for you too than so many other things you can do. And it's fun. I don't know. I enjoy it. So I feel
Hmm.
lucky in that way too, because I do like it.
Yeah. 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 Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're
Yeah.
good, right?
Good chatting with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Good talk. Good talk.
Huh.
Now we just need to come up with a title for this one.
I don't know. We'll figure it
Yeah.
out. Something.
Hmm.
Something happened. So anyway, yeah. So thanks for joining us. If you guys stuck it through to the end, this is the Exodus Thug podcast. Check us out later this week for a quick fix, a short episode. Watch on YouTube, listen wherever you get your podcast. Like, subscribe, share. It helps us out a lot. We'll be back again later. Until then, though, later, Randy.
Later, Danny.